you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. I can't find my hat. I'm looking for my hat. But picture a Tear Talk hat right around here, which covers right around this part right here. I used to have more, but now I'm in my 40s and I've gotten less. We're going to have a very good topic. This topic is geared if you're new in the profession, because that's kind of where I believe this topic is going to hit home. And it's really about how you get that immediate sense of authority, that perception of authority off to that inmate population. Because trust and believe, guys, at the beginning of your career, you got to set that level high. So what I want to do is I want to discuss today with Russ Hamilton and Beast Larson, Sergeant Steve Larsen. We're going to discuss how do you get that perception of authority immediate, right away. And we're going to be talking about housing units, dorms, maybe pods. We'll figure out where the dialogue goes. But in the meantime, this is going to be a great discussion. I know we have a lot to offer because I got some veterans on who are zero tolerance, who are all about authority. So we'll go first with, I see Steve smiling. We'll go first with Russ Hamilton. Hey, Russ, Keepers of Chaos. And what do we got? Wait, don't tell me, mine just went blank. Keepers of Chaos and that Tough Mutter. How's it going?
We're still working on that.
Yeah, so how Keepers of Chaos way past 4,000 now. You mind? I guess just a general introduction.
Oh, okay. Keepers of Chaos on Facebook. We're up over 4,000 members now. I think we're just about ready to eclipse 4,200. We're trying to get ready to do the Tough Mutter, kind of a team effort at it. That's turning out a little bit harder to get to because of all the COVID stuff that's happened. So Tough Mutter is slowly spinning its wheels up. I'm waiting for the right events to become available before I buy some tickets and really start promoting it more. And then just in general, happy to be here, happy to be attacking this subject. And that's all I've got for today.
Well, it's a lot, Russ. Don't minimize it. It's a lot. Hey, Sarge, what's going on, man? Nice to have you back on the show. So, hey, mind introducing yourself again?
Sergeant Beast Larsen. My first name is Steve. Most people call me Beast. Military, retired law enforcement. I've been on 2 SWAT teams. And I worked in a level 5 max security prison 4 years. 2 of them as a sergeant in a behavior unit. Was on the CERT team and assistant commander of attack squad. So I don't have a t-shirt that says Beast or anything on today. I kind of dressed up to look a little more like an administrator because I did think administratively, I did think policy-wise, things of the law, how not to get sued, even though my role probably 90% was to be an enforcer. I do use my brain.
Well, I do want to say I think Tear Talk may have softened the Beast up, but but the key here is we want to make sure we give out the right advice. I mean, that's the key, And all jokes aside, use of force, obviously you always have to be ready to employ it, but it's not something that we look forward to doing. But don't think we won't. I mean, that's the key. But we want to really try our best to resolve it, in a manner where nobody gets hurt. But sometimes that's just not the option. Now, also, real quick, a couple of things real quick. I do have a book out, or it's coming out, sorry to the editors now, about inmate manipulation. I also have some individual stories that will be submitted towards the end of the book, just to show you a little bit more about the process from people that also have went through maybe almost being set up. Russ Hamilton's going to have a story in that. Louis Soto, maybe the Beast will have one if he can get me one. I around 800 to 1,000 words. I'll need it in a few days. I also got William Young, Connie. So everybody has these stories. So for people to think that it can't happen, it can, guys. Trust me, because it's not about the outcome, guys. It's about the process. The level of control. That's what it is that they're looking for. And we all can fall vulnerable to situations that arise. So don't look at the individual so much, but as the situation. What made this person do what they did? What was the motivation behind that? Also, I was talking to Connie, and obviously I'll have Russ, Steve, whoever wants to be involved in this. We may start doing some virtual training. I'm getting a lot of requests to do stuff like that. So I do have a course already out there called Inmate Manipulation. We'll work on that probably Connie's got this course where you kind of build that bridge between civilians and custody. I think that's a great course. So we'll start offering that. I think Russ got something on complacency. And I'm sure Sergeant Steve, if you want to do something, I'm sure you can come up with a course. And what we'll do is we'll try to find a way to get it to you guys. I think it's going to have to be Connie that's going to host it, whether it's webinar or whatever. And it's going to have to be a limited amount of seating, just because I don't know if it's bandwidth or whatever it is. We can only, I think it's up to 50. I forget, but we're working on it now. Getting a lot of requests. So I have the experts. You guys tell us what you're interested in. And if I don't have an expert, we could find it. I mean, that's not a problem. We could find somebody. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tear Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor when we come back. Let's talk about our presence of authority. How do we establish that the first day we're on the job? Oof. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description.
All right, guys, and we're back. So, I guess we all agree, right, that this is kind of geared towards those rookies, right? People that, are just entering the profession that really want to have that respect immediately, especially with the inmate population. So I'll start with Russ first, but how important is it for rookies on that first day to have some level of authority, like that presence of authority there?
Well, it's extremely important, but it's much harder to pull off for a rookie because, right from the get-go, you got to understand that these inmates, they know how to read people. They know that they're dealing with a rookie. They know that this is a new guy, fresh meat. And so they're going to be tested from the get-go. So make no mistake about that. I think the most important thing a rookie can do is, be looking at those post orders, be trying to implement policy, be trying to mirror what ostensibly should be, good staff in that area. But within your area of authority, you should be doing your rounds. You should be observant. You should have your head on a swivel. You should bring with you as much bearing to that as you can. But you know what? That's really just the first step. When we talk about exerting control over a housing unit, really, it has to be a comprehensive effort by all shifts, by all individuals. And it's much harder to exert that control once you let that slip away. And I've seen it before where you get some officers that are complacent. They're not doing their jobs. They let it slip away. And then you go back in and it's hard to wrest that back, especially if you don't have a good management team that's willing to give you a little bit extra resources to draw at from the beginning.
Yeah, and Steve, as we opened up the show, we did talk about the importance of maintaining or having that presence of authority in housing units, dorms, pods. I mean, how important is it for that presence of authority? Again, we're talking about the first day here, the moment you enter that housing unit or that dorm.
Very important. And I think one thing to throw in real quick, this is going to also vary depending on what level of prison. I was at a level 5. I visited and did searches at level 3, minimum, faith-based, or a level 4. So that kind of, gangs or not, that's going to dictate how this gets handled. Also at our level 5 prison, we had dorms that were dominant, controlled by gang. And we had some dorms that were over 40, most of them were lifers, but over 40, we had a faith-based dorm. So you need to know your first day, your first week, as you're a dorm officer, who's in that dorm, what do they stand for? If they're in the over 40 and lifers, they're just like brothers and family, going to hang out, sing songs, have church for years until they die. They're not going to be a problem. That's going to be much easier to get control of.
You know what's funny? A lot of people think that the lifers are the problem, and they're not. It's the young bucks that keep coming in and out of the system. I'll go to Steve first on this one. A lot of people think that, you know, when they get into this profession, that uniform is that sole symbol of authority. And we've discussed this multiple times. Obviously, it's who you are, how you carry yourself. So what are some of the things that rookies need to get across the moment they enter into that housing unit and dorm, like right off the get-go?
Right off, and I'm always talking about fundamentals, but they're key. You never lose your fundamentals. Your appearance, your officer presence. Your first day, you need to be boot shined, hair, face need to be perfect, inspection ready. You walk into a dorm for the very first time, you'll probably have your senior officer, who's the other dorm next to you, be with you. But you need to go in and make that first impression. Go in, you can announce yourself. Hey, I'm Officer Larson. This is going to be my dorm today. Things are going to go smoothly. Programs are going to get ran in a timely manner. If you come in and announce and say that with confidence on your first day, that'll get their attention. You need to establish, when you've walked in and said all that, as your eyes are scanning, even though it's your first day and you really don't know what you're doing, but you need to figure out or ask before you get there, which dorm, which cell is going to be your dorm orderly. The orderly is not just the one sweeping and mopping the floor, but he's also your go-to person. If you need to run in and say, hey, there's some kind of emergency, I know everybody lined up, you're going to go to your dorm orderly or to a gang leader, but you're not going to know the gang leader and the gang structure until later.
Right, and I want to add on something. I know Russ is going to definitely want to attack the question I just asked you, Steve, but I also want to mention something first, too. I also think it's very important that even if you don't have that level of authority because you're a rookie and you're trying to work your way, so you know inmates are going to test you, you can balance that by showing how connected you are to your peer support. You know, let the inmates see right off the bat that, okay, maybe all right, if I don't know, maybe you guys don't think I know a lot, that's fine, but I got my backup right here. So you're not going to be able to isolate me and play games, because no matter what, when I'm stuck in those ambiguous situations, I'm going to balance what I don't know with them, who are going to give me the ability to be better at what I do. So make sure that you stay connected to peers that you can trust, you know, the ones that do the job the way it needs to be done. But I know it's Russ. Russ, what's your thoughts on what I asked Steve?
Yeah, you know, it really is important to establish yourself like that, but you also got to realize that Rome wasn't built in a day. You're going to have to go in there with the expectation that this is what you're going to do today, and then the next day you're going to do the same thing, but more of it. And you're going to eventually, you know, build your reputation. You're going to build the compliance that you're able to, get over your span of control within that situation. You're going to build your rapport, for lack of a better term, with the inmates. And you're not going to come off, and you're not going to, you know, have everything that you need at the end of that first day, or the second day, or the third day. You got to realize that you're in this for the long haul. This is part of your career. This is part of, you know, where you're going to build to over the course of that career over the years to come. So don't get wrapped up and think that, you know, everything is going to be perfect, that because you don't have the experience to carry that off. You have to rely on the staff around you and what you've been taught in the academy, and what you bring of your own character into that situation.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned kind of being humble new, because if you're coming into this profession, you're new, you have to be humble, obviously, because experienced officers are going to give you, guess what, guys? Consistency. Because if you're new and you don't know what's going on, you're going to be very inconsistent. You know, so if you kind of find your way going to that senior staff's going to help you become consistent. Consistent shows confidence. So again, if you feel lost at any level, you go to your senior staff, they'll give you what you need, and they're going to help you stay consistent. Again, just with that little guidance, but it's exactly what Russ said. Be humble. You don't know, this profession is people think it's a lot simpler than it is, and it's not, guys. This profession is extremely hard. And if you walk in thinking that you know it all on day one, you'll be done by day two. I'm sorry. I don't care what anyone says. It's the truth. Now, I want to read something off, and I'll go to Russ first. I took some of the comments. I posted it on my Facebook page, got a good amount of comments here. And one of the things is it's just a little dialogue between two people. I'm going to read it off. But this is I want to give this to Russ because Russ taught me a different way to look at this. So Russ probably already knows what I'm going to get at right now. The old consistent phrase in corrections. Be firm, fair, and consistent. But let me just give you the dialogue first, and then I'm going to give you Russ's interpretation of this, which I think was spot on. You learn something new every day. The way I was doing it, Russ came in and said, Gangi, you're fucking wrong. You're teaching everybody the wrong thing. No, he didn't do that. I'm joking. No, but he's like, hey, Gangi, you know what? You got to try it out this way. And when Russ told me that, it was literally a wake-up call from something that I've been doing for 15, 16 years at the time. And then Russ gives me this other perspective, and I'm like, holy shit, that was for me to internalize it and then bring it out. Where my other way was I was expecting a lot on the environment, and Russ turned it inwards and said, no, you want that in the environment. You have to bring that out of yourself. You make the environment happen, and I thought that's something that I've taken with me from this day forward. I wish I would have had it at day one, but it's continuing with me right now as administration, with even just dealing with staff. It's very well thought out. But just a little dialogue here between Jeff and Fern. Jeff says, firm, fair, and consistent. Set the tone from the start. Let them know that you aren't a doormat, but you'll do your job. And then Fern, in return, in agreement, says, that's it, and that's all. It will take time, but they'll get it. Always follow the rules and regulations. And one last part, Michael, agreeing with Jeff, says, I like Jeff's answer. I start by laying down the ground rules and direct supervision. Then I follow through with progressive discipline. If you need to lay I won't get to the other part, guys. Sorry, guys. First time reading that bottom part. But well said, the first part. So, Russ, what's your thoughts? Firm, fair, and consistency. How do you explain that? What's your thoughts with how you need to set that up on day one?
Well, I always talk about this because I think that when people discuss that, it just kind of has aggravated me in the past with regard to they tend to think and they tend to project that that's about our treatment of the inmates. And that's not. Firm, fair, and consistent is for us. That's for us to follow so that we can stay within the guideposts, the guidelines, and the duty of what our job is. These inmates, they don't deserve, firmness, fairness, or consistency. But we give that to them. We extend that to them nonetheless. But that's to keep our path, going in the right direction so we don't step outside those bounds, so that we don't do something that's unethical, immoral, or against the law, right? That's what we have to focus on. That's what we have. That has to be our anchor so that we're able to carry out our duty in not just a professional manner, but in a lawful manner, so that we don't feel that we have to, color outside the lines and do something that's going to get us in a jam, that's going to get us in a problem with, the criminal justice system.
Right. And also, before we go to Steve, they touched on kind of setting that zero tolerance from day one. I've done a video where I asked people, should you write up an inmate for every little thing? That answer is going to differ depending on how many years or how much experience you have. When you're a senior officer and you got some experience, you could probably navigate around some small write-ups but still establish that level of authority. It's not like you're letting the inmates get away with it, but there's a way that you can maneuver that you're not calling the sergeant up every minute to handle that. But when you're a rookie, the sergeant should be expecting you to be calling them up because they know you're going to be played. So you set the zero tolerance because it keeps that level high. So again, when I ask someone, should you write up an inmate for every little thing? As a rookie, yes. You don't have discretion yet. And the supervisors, don't get on them. Help them. That's what they're supposed to do because they're going to be played. And I'll tell you something. You're a supervisor and you realize that your rookies aren't calling you. You should go back and check because that to me is a problem. I'm expecting write-ups when I was a sergeant. But again, if you're a senior officer, come on, utilize some discretion. Don't be given your level of responsibility all the time for the sergeant to handle. They're not running the unit. You are. Maneuver. Do the correct thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about emergency situations. I'm talking about in-house management. But what's your thoughts on that? Firm, fair, and consistent, and Russ's perspective, Steve?
Definitely. That's in my notes. And firm, fair, and consistent equals respect. Firm, you've got to be firm. You have to be saying yes with confidence. Carry out your manners with confidence. Call chow with confidence. Say mail call with confidence. Line up for count with confidence. Being fair means saying no. And there's 20 adjectives I can type out that goes before the word no. Most of them start with bad letters, but you got to say no. You got to learn how to say no and when to say it. And then you have to be consistent with your yeses and your nos. You have to be consistent. And it's as an officer, I found it's good to, as the inmates eat their breakfast, they get back, they settle down back in the dorm, I go and eat a breakfast. Let them see that you're on a personal schedule. That helps them to see you're going to hold them to a schedule. That's how it helped me to be consistent as a new officer, having my own schedule.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I mean, I don't know. I know some places they may not allow the officers to eat on the unit, but I get the moral of what you're saying. And we're not talking about scheduling to show that you're predictable. That's not the key, because inmates, there's a routine with the facility. We understand that. And there's still some variance that can break us away from the specifics of what we're talking about when it comes to being predictable. But yes, there should be some level of consistency in regards to I know what to expect from this officer. I know what to expect from, even if it's a supervisor, this supervisor. That expectation, again, it doesn't mean that you're predictable. It means that when the inmates come on, they know that you're consistent. These are the things that you're going to go after. These are the things that you may kind of, okay, I can work with you on this. But at the end of the day, that consistency does not mean predictability. It's actually expectation. So think about that, guys. Consistency equals expectation, not predictability. Find a way to, I mean, hey, we all know we got to take a count, let's say every half an hour, correct? But maybe I'll go down this wing first. And the next time, maybe I'll go down this wing first. You know, I mean, whatever it is, there's some variance within that predictability. You know, so be unpredictable within predictability. I guess that's a way of saying it. To close off on that one, being firm, fair, and consistent, when this person was new, Sakea de Jamanco, they said being firm, fair, and consistent, give them what they're entitled to, nothing less or more. I used to gather them. Now, this is on his first day running a unit, or she. I can't make out from the name. I think it's a gentleman. I used to gather them all in the back of the housing area to find out if there were any issues relating to the house that needed attention and what my rules for the entire house was when I was on. Once you establish respect, you have a smooth day. So I do think there's good advice there. We're definitely letting the inmates know this is what I expect. And I like what Steve complimented on that. Be consistent with that. If it's a yes today, yes, whatever it is. If it's a no today, no tomorrow. Be consistent. If you lay out rules, those are the rules. The moment you go to waiver, that's a window of vulnerability for an inmate. So I set the rules at the beginning of the day. You know, whatever those rules are, don't change them, not even an inch. Because they want that inch shows an inmate that, he'll go 2 inches, 4 inches, double on down the line. It begins the process. Let me see what we got next. This is a very good guy. Now, we've had Jim Carpenter on the show before. He is a jail administrator out in Nebraska, and he says that he agrees with the firm, fair, and consistency. He also says, I agree with a lot of the stuff, but some of it is punitive without cause. The quickest way to take control of a housing unit immediately is to walk in with the right attitude and demeanor, which is what Steve leaned on before, and put off the vibe that you own the place without throwing your authority around. So I want to talk about that real quick. So I'll go with Steve first, then Russ. How do you present that level of authority in a manner that's respectful, but also not throwing it around haphazardly?
There's 3 words to taking over a dorm, but this kind of leads away from your first day. You can earn their respect. You can take it out of respect. You can take it by force or take it by intimidation. So you need to take a strong sergeant or your best lieutenant to go with you. If you need to go into a dorm and make something happen and show that kind of non-physical, non-threatening or intimidating force, you take the right lieutenant or sergeant, or like, you guys take a 6'4" sergeant with you. I talk about this in officer presence. Pick your friends. Pick the friends that work out a whole lot and are tall. That's a clue. Pick the right friends to go with you, the ones that know how to play, know how to have a poker face, know the good cop, bad cop's what I mean by play. When you take that group and you come in and say, hey, this has to happen, it has to happen now, because you give them a reason why they're kind of like kids and teenagers. You can't tell your teenagers to do something without giving them a why. Show that presence, tell them why, and then say, we're doing it right now. And that's you look at them and then you wait.
Yeah, I think that's really spot on because you said something I want to touch on too. You're talking about bringing in support, and that's something we want to mention. Guys, if you're a senior officer, we talked about it a little briefly at the beginning, but just from the other perspective, that support gives the rookie that level of authority on the first day. So show that connection immediately. Do not show that you're leaving the sink or swim. I'm going to leave the rookie out. Let them, no. Balance that. Let them see that support is there because that's going to elevate that rookie's level of authority. So again, for senior staff, trust and believe. If you let those rookies sink or swim, you just took away a lot of that authority that they need to balance off those ambiguous situations where they don't know what they need to do. And Russ, what's your thoughts on what I asked Steve?
There's different aspects to doing this. The aspect that we've been talking about so far is from the perspective of someone who's relatively new and coming into it. When you first started talking about this particular subject, I was thinking about, other parts of it where we're in a situation where we've had a housing unit or a dorm or something that's, gradually been let go to pot. And how do we either take that back? There's a slow way to do it where we get the right personnel in there, we build the continuity, and we start, tightening down the bolts a little bit at a time. Sometimes you've let it go so far that that's no longer the answer. And it gets to be to the point where maybe you're going to go in there and do, a hard ass raid with 40 millimeter projectiles and that kind of thing, remove some of the problem children from out of there. And, from the get-go, you have to, it's not about tightening things up slowly. It's about, going in there and doing something for effect. Either way is something that you have to tailor to that particular situation. Now, when we talk about, what a new individual can do, hopefully he has the right people to mirror and do that. And I think that those people talking to you new people that are out there and first getting exposed to this is be looking for the right person to model. Someone who's not just laid back and letting things happen around them. You want to find that individual that's involved and engaged in running that unit, involved and engaged with the right tactics and with the right attitude. And you'll have a lot less problems as you go into this thing, and things will run more smoothly. Smooth isn't necessarily the best thing, because I've seen officers that think that, hey, smooth is the only thing, so just hands off. And it works for a little bit, but sooner or later, something wobbles loose and comes back and bites you hard in the ass.
Yeah, and Russ, you touched on a few things too, by the way. I want to actually share a story. Situational awareness is key in this profession. A lot of people really, they focus on the individual, but technically it's understanding the situations that you're in. And that definitely comes with your presence of authority, because inmates can manipulate situations to take some level of control of your authority. And by the way, guys, you don't give up an ounce of it. But I'm going to tell you a story where, because we're talking about you don't want to flaunt that level of authority. It's true. You don't need to. The inmates know what your position is. All you have to do is maintain it. Once you come on, the inmates know what your position is. It's yours to lose, believe it or not. You maintain it, but it's yours to lose. You cannot let the inmates take a bit of an ounce. But really, authority is just a perception. Me and Russ did a show on this before, and I want to share a story. I may have shared it a while back, but if you guys haven't seen the video, this actually story is one of my stories. I don't share a lot of personal stories. I'm still on the job, but it's nothing that's a risk to the facility, so I could share it. But it's about presence of authority. And when I was new, I thought that, again, I don't want to give up an ounce, right? But I took that as a challenge, where if I felt that any inmate even gave me a little bit of word that they're taking my authority, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. So we're going to go back and forth. And most likely in my attempt to get my authority, I became rather verbally aggressive, and I'm not realizing at the time that I'm losing that level of control. where I'm just being tested. I'll give you a little scenario about kind of like situational awareness here, where I had an inmate, a female inmate, that challenged my directive. She did the directive, but she had this like mouth. She would just talk, say stuff. And I expected when I gave you an order, you do it, you shut up, and you do it. That's it. Do it. It's not always going to be that way, especially at a female facility. I got the compliance, but I got a little bickering. And sometimes, again, this is a profession, you got to have thick skin. But when I was new, I took the bickering as a challenge to my authority. But at the end, the person's still doing the job. They're just bickering over little things. And so we would have this back and forth. And I think I have total control of the situation because I'm actually I only see me technically what I'm doing, but technically I really didn't have any control. The senior officer was watching me in the back and he's watching me have this exchange. And I'm glad he didn't get involved right away. I am. This was a learning lesson for me. When the exchange was done between me and the inmate, I went back into the office and the senior officer was quick to say, hey, so did you think you had control of what was going on there? And of course, me, hell yeah, I did. I'm not going to let her badmouth me. And I went off on this tangent of, how I maintain control by not letting her get those last remarks off. To me, that was control for me. It was like, if I had to get that last word, if she said this, I had to say something back. And, just being witty individuals, I'm not going to let you get that off. And he goes, what have you solved? She was doing the job anyway. So you're out there for 5 or 10 minutes going back and forth. By the way, everybody's watching you and you're not watching everybody else. You're so myopic. You're so focused on this individual. He goes, did you ever ask, what's with this mouth? Like, why is she even talking back? Like, what's the concern? He goes, I'm going to tell you something. You don't know the environment you're in right now. What you need to do is do what I've done. Take that inmate aside, talk to that inmate away from everybody, and watch that inmate be a different individual. He goes, because when you were going back and forth bickering, the inmates were motivating her to say stuff. So she had to. It's the environment that she's in. I guarantee you want a good presence of authority. You take that inmate aside, you talk to them without that influence, and she'll be a different person. So I was like, I'm going to give this a shot, again, whatever it is. So a couple of days later, I'm back in the unit, getting ready to give her this assignment. And I said, you know what? Hey, come here for a second. And, comes into the office. And I swear she went like this, whew, as if she was exhausted. And here I am. I said, what is with this? She goes, Gangi, I have an image. You know what I mean? We're good. But by the way, she never gave me a problem after that. But the point is, I wasn't focused on anything. So I was just focused on me, having to get that last remark off. I had no level of control, even though I thought I had control. So sometimes what you got to do is take a breather, step back. I mean, literally step back. And I feel that sometimes even at the very beginning, a good level of control is a serious one-on-one with an inmate. Let an inmate know you're not going to tolerate that, but it's a controlled one-on-one. You talk to an inmate in front of all their boys, they're going to be one way. But if you talk to them one-on-one and say, hey, listen, come here for a second. I'm going to tell you something right now. One-on-one, man-to-man, or man-to-woman, whatever the case may be. This is the stuff I'm going to tolerate. This is the stuff I'm not going to tolerate. And eventually word will travel. But there may be some level of respect between you and that individual. But what's your thoughts on that, Steve, having that one-on-one as opposed to trying to address them all right out in the open?
I agree with that. And I've got a funny story. It's a little bit different than that. I'm not sure you want me to put it on here. We did a bait and switch. We had a new sergeant, had bad officer presence. He tried to one-on-one. And it was at breakfast time. The guy was a high-ranking gang member. And he decided he wanted an extra meal that morning for breakfast, just because. He said, I am so-and-so, and I want an extra breakfast. And the new sergeant, they went back and forth. They were arguing. He took a shampoo bottle. He squirted urine through the door crack on the sergeant. So now we go from word to word to now there's body fluids squirted on the sergeant. Sergeant opens the feed flap, sprays him. Big can of supervisor spray. Sprayed the mate. Well, the guy's face was already wet. He'd watered his face down to help prevent, the best reaction. So now the words are still going back and forth. There's a second spray gets involved. Well, they call me to come down from the other unit. And Inmates are smart, but you can still get one over on them. So they expected this inexperienced, very upset supervisor, brand new sergeant, to lead the cell extraction because he was ready to go. He got his clothes on. He wrapped his head up and everything. He's ready to fight. He said, I'm not coming out. They had to move him. So we did the bait and switch. They called me down, the sergeant, and the team was already geared up. He took the gear off and I put it on. So now I became the shield man and the front man of the team. We went in and I had a one-on-one discussion with him, you know, the way the beast does. And when we came out and I was leading him, I had to hold him up from the front and the other guys had to hold him on the side. And I'll throw this too. He also told us that the floor was covered in baby oil and he was covered in baby oil and feces. And we couldn't see because he covered the window. So I told him, when you open that door, give me a half a second to peek. I threw a sheet on the floor so we could run across a dry floor. He picked the mattress up and said, let's go. So I had the shield. He had his mattress and he lost. When we came out, we were walking down the walkway in the dorm. I took my gas mask off and let everybody know. We just did the bait and switch and they knew the end result. That's why there's 3 of us walking him down the walkway, not 2.
You know, and I'll tell you something. I mean, obviously, it's the world we live in. There's nothing pretty about use of force, but definitely shows support. I mean, your story alone highlights the fact that I got my sergeant's back. He was new in the position, and I went ahead and, you know, knew where he needed help, and I jumped. A lot of people, they still have me and Russ did the sink or swim, but it's not about that. It's about stepping up and helping your brother and sister, especially when you see that they're having a problem. Because at the end of the day, the only person that wins with that is the inmate. You know, if you want to let the officer make mistakes or the benefit for that is the inmate. We're not in a position where we can afford that to happen at all. Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on, because we get a lot of new boots that enter this profession that are young, and like me, as the story I mentioned, where I kind of took everything as a challenge to my authority, which not realizing that actually taking everything as a challenge to my authority actually makes me look unprofessional. And also just like I have no control of who I am. So, I mean, how do you balance that? Like if you have an inmate that, you know, maybe he's doing the job, but is getting those remarks off. I mean, is it worth having that back and forth like I did? Or do you try to have that one-on-one?
Well, you know, I think one of the things is that, you know, you go into this job and usually, you know, a lot of us are starting pretty young. So we feel we have something to prove. And so maybe, you know, maybe some of that stuff is unavoidable to a degree because, you know, you're still actually fairly new in life. But if you approach it from the perspective of you're going to try to put yourself in a position where you're actually learning something and you're trying to figure out your communication skills and you're trying to put things on a par when you know when and where to use, you know, intimidation and when and where to use, you know, sound judgment and reasoning, and to try and just manage to figure out that you don't want to let an inmate paint themselves into a corner because they're painting you into a corner at that same time as well. And as you start taking away those options, there's fewer and fewer ways that you're going to come to an agreeable solution, right? Something's going to end up getting lost in the translation. And then it's all going to go bad, even, you know, even afterwards, even if you're justified in your force or if you have to write the inmate up and something is taken away, there's better ways to approach it. So be that thoughtful officer that sees all of the different permutations, all of the different possible ways that it can go. Maybe there's only one way that it can go, and that's the way it is with some inmates. But try and, you know, give them a reasonable out. You know, or pull them aside. And that's one way you can do it, is by pulling them aside and trying to reason with them or giving them some other incentive to try and go along with the program. But if you're in there and you're doing nothing but trying to prove yourself and how tough you are day after day, it's just going to get old for the people around you. You're not going to become as skilled as you should be working with those inmates and trying to figure out, you know, when is the right time to use force? When is the right time to de-escalate? When is the right time to pull someone aside? When is the right time to find something other than a tactic to use on someone? You know, and it takes, unfortunately, it takes damn near an entire career to where you get to be that final finished product at the end. maybe some people are better at, at shortening that. I went through a whole process, my first couple of years, I called, my cowboy phase. But, eventually I learned a lot more of the nuance and a lot more of, the head game that it really is, because it really is. I mean, there's a lot to this. And so if you put your head in the game and you're halfway smart, you can be a much more effective officer than just trying to butt heads all day long.
Yeah, and I think for me, the one-on-one has helped me out in my career most of the time. I mean, sometimes, as you said, it really is dependent on the inmate. But most of the time when you pull them away from people that would motivate that behavior, it's a different approach. And then you just save energy because you're picking and choosing, am I going to waste my energy now? And plus also the concern, when let's say you have a mass movement going on and the inmate says something that's not a threat, but something like side of their mouth, again, not a threat. Threats are different. I'm just talking about just something stupid out of the side of their mouth. Do you really want to approach them when you have 50 inmates out and only 5 officers? Or, because we always have control, I can get that inmate a few hours later. Everybody's locked down. I pull the inmate out of the cell and said, what were you saying before? What was the concern? What's going on? And kind of have that one-on-one. Because at the end of the day, a lot of times we get these codes because there's a personal concern between an officer and, let's say, an inmate. And now it's, 50 inmates on 2 officers, when it's like, hey, dude, you should have just waited a couple of minutes when we had more control. Again, there's no threat being said at this point. When we had more control, we'll have control. That inmate will think he's in the clear. And a couple hours later, we come back and we establish our level of authority, remind them that this is our house. I know you had something you wanted to say, Russ.
Yeah, one thing that, I often tell the new guys and stuff is being there to play the long game, not everything, you don't have to get instant, get back and gratification, that shift, that week, that month, be in it for the long game, make sure that, your range of the moment is actually, the range of the week or the range of the month or the range of the year. And you'll start to see the bigger picture. You'll start to be able to focus on the things that matter. And you won't, be missing the forest for the trees that are in front of your face. And, it really takes a lot more maturity and a lot more smarts to be able to pull that off. But if you think of it in those terms, think of it in terms of playing the long game.
Yeah, and I want to say, one more area you want to cover before we wrap it up. How we document things matters too. So like inmates may not see all the reports we write, unless it gets to a higher level, then obviously, there's many different appeals that they can have. But on the immediate level, they definitely see the charge. And I have seen officers that carry themselves confident that are just not the best at writing charges. I mean, they just don't invest their time in proofreading it, spellings off, whatever it is. And inmates will start looking at that like this person, is not as smart as they need to be an officer and working in this unit. Guys, we have to always check our work. Take time, write the charges, take time to make sure it looks good, take time to make sure it looks professional, because I'm going to tell you something, a lot of your authority comes from that documentation that you do. And if it doesn't look correct, the inmates automatically have that window of, you know what, man, I don't care what anyone says. Look how they write their reports, or look how they write those charges, right? I mean, how important is that, Steve? What we document, how that looks.
That's very important. Inmates know, we use the word grievance. Our documents were called a grievance down in Georgia. And they know if we write something wrong or any little thing's incorrect, it's thrown out. So they learn the behaviors of the officers. They learn their intelligence and how they articulate. They'll push you to death. They'll take advantage of it all day. They'll get you flustered. And then their buddies do this. So now all of a sudden, instead of having 1 or 2 inmates to deal with and to write up carefully, there's 15 of them that's done something wrong. And the point of that is to make the officer mad, so mad that they don't write anything up. They just want to go home. They want to go home and escape. Or they have to try and write 15 with their supervisor, and 13 or 14 of them are going to get messed up. They're going to have those little errors that your disciplinary report administrator throws them all out. And that's a tactical plan on the inmate's part.
Yeah, that's well said, because I think a lot of people may not realize that one of the most, I think it's like the initial impression of authority that's most valued by inmates is how you write a charge, how you document incidences, and if they feel that there's any level of weakness, that there is what justifies your word. So if you can't write anything and you can't back it up, your authority is just not going to be there. But I've seen rookies that could really write a charge, and the inmates will be quick to say, "Nah, not messing with that one. Last time he wrote me, and I couldn't beat the charge." I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Russ? The documentation part.
Yeah, documentation is always paramount, and I've had lots of officers and stuff that I've talked to over the years, and it always comes up in conversation about how some weak lieutenant let the guy off and stuff, and I always said, you know what, that's not the lieutenant's fault. That's your fault for not writing a good report. And so I come back to my little saying that I always used to tell the new guys. I said, if you want to hold a crucifixion, you got to bring the nails. And so my reports were tight, and I wouldn't leave anyone any room. I would purposefully, destroy any possible loophole that they would have. And then they were left with what? They were left with zero.
Right. And that, to me, I mean, I've done that with my charges now. I'm quick and to the point. I write exactly what needs to be written, and I leave out the why. It's not my place to kind of put the why in there, but my key is, this is what happened, when it happened, who was involved, and how it happened, and whatever date and time it may be. But at the end, guys, that's one of the things you have to take serious, because that is what backs up that level of authority too, because you may look the part, but then when it gets translated on paper, you don't fit the part, so, have that presence, yes, but also take your time with doing those reports. And, if need be, take a breather before you write it, if you're able to do that. Don't write it when you're high in emotion. But so I think a couple of things here that we discussed. One thing is definitely we talked about presence. I know Steve actually touched on that, stand by your yes. You have to believe it, man. Yeah, you have to believe. You have to be able to justify that. And we talked about that, guys. That's an internal belief, as opposed to an external. Like, I'm not, when I have an order I have to give, I believe in the order I have to give because I'm giving it. It's not because the sergeant told me to do it. No, it's because I'm giving it. It's my internal response. It's how I manifest that belief onto that population. They have to believe what it is that I'm giving out. We also talked about the presence. You got to be neat, man. You got to come on the job. You got to be neat. How you give out that command. Again, we talked about support, because you only have presence of authority if you're supported by your supervisors and your peers. And again, as a rookie, you're going to be put in a lot of ambiguous situations. So how do I balance that? I balance that by making sure the inmates see that I'm supported. So, you're never going to get me alone. My authority's there, even in situations where I'm not, I'm a little confused of what to do. It's okay, but I'm not going to you. I used to hate senior officers or supervisors that were so lazy that instead of them visit the unit, they would say, if you have any questions, Inmate Hamilton's been on the unit for quite some time, you can ask them. Are you fucking kidding me? Why would I want to ask Inmate Hamilton when I have a staff of, let's say, 50 or 60 officers here, or you as a supervisor? How about if I have any questions, you get off your ass and you come to the unit and you help me? But that happens, guys. It's sad to say, but it happens. So we all kind of help protect each other's level of authority, whether you're new, whether you're senior. That's our job. It's a perception of authority. We do whatever we can to protect it. As a supervisor, one of the things we should mention too is that however you have to correct that new person coming in, try to do it in a manner that, yes, it's constructive, but also empower them to correct themselves, because they're not going to be perfect. They're going to make mistakes. As long as it's not emergent, give them the chance that if they know how to be a yes, then let them figure out a way to make it a yes without letting them feel that daddy had to come in and correct the issue. At all times, we need to empower our officers. So give the officer a chance to rectify whatever that mistake is so they can keep that level of control. Do not let the inmates circumvent that first level authority, and then all of a sudden they think, okay, well, the sergeant's what made it a yes. Don't do that. Give it back to the officer and let the officer be able to give that yes if that change needs to take place. We talked about being firm, fair, consistent. Again, but you yourself believing in it and then manifesting it out. And consistency was very important to us because we did talk on how, we have to be consistent with each other. And our consistency comes as new from the people that, are our peers who will give us the consistency, which will give us the confidence that's needed to be a professional. And again, the documentation, documentation. Let me just say something real quick. everything we just said just now, because we could do this topic again, including being a supervisor and having that level of confidence on day one. But I'll tell you something right now. Everything we said doesn't matter if you can't write a charge. Doesn't matter if you don't take the time to write what needs to be written. If you look unprofessional on those reports, everything we just taught you is for shit, because nothing's going to stick. Hey, Steve, you have anything you want to say in closing?
No, we covered everything. I've got 2 pages of notes and we hit it all. And that's from our experience. That's because things really are consistent from state to state and agency to agency. Thanks again for having me. Everybody, don't forget my YouTube channel pretty much focuses on defensive tactics. There's some exercise, some motivational things, but it's, between the 3 of us, we cover the mind, body, and spirit. I'm kind of like covering the body part of this.
Well, hey, you got to give the name of your YouTube channel.
Sergeant Beast Larson, the thing that we've said about 27 times.
Yeah, we
Sergeant
shouldn't forget that, right? Maybe. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
50,000 views. I'm 49,000 and some change, and 480 subscribers. And the channel is a little bit different, but that's a lot of people that want to grow. I've had police officers injured. I had one from Arizona, New Year's Eve, 11:30 at night, took a hammer in the head, and he sent a picture to me. He said, I found your video while I was sitting in the hospital on my cell phone thinking, how can I improve? He found me. He friend requested me. He sent me a message. He said, can you call me? I called and talked to him. He said, I'm a young officer. I'm 28, married with kids. It's my first physical confrontation. I won because I got him in cuffs. I got control, but I'm getting a lot of stitches in my head right now. And we've talked ever since January 1st.
There's a request. Now, I do have an MMA guy, because in New Jersey, we do MMA. That's what we're taught. I had a request for a video, but I haven't been able to get it yet. And maybe one day we could work on it. But we want to kind of make it like live action, not like a step-by-step. And I see your videos are live action. I don't know if you ever want to put something on my channel, surviving a shank attack, from different levels, from standing up and also maybe being knocked on your back. I mean, obviously you're gonna have to choose a body part that's gonna get fucked up. Unfortunately, but I'm looking for. I'm looking for like a live video on that. I think the audience would like that. So maybe, I don't know if it's possible, that would be pretty cool, and I'll put it up on the channel. But yeah, guys, if you get a chance, guys, really check out Sergeant Beast Larson's YouTube channel. It has a lot of good information. I also saw you had a nice video on inmate manipulation where you kind of had stuff written down and you kind of broke it down. It was a nice long video, but definitely a lot of information that, if you can't watch it all at once, piecemeal it out, but just a lot of good information. And also, I want to say, if I'm correct, your daughter's in a lot of these videos, right?
Yes, a daughter. And last week, one of her friends, her guy friends, who loves doing this with me, he helped me. We were doing stand-up knife fighting, and I just called it knife fighting practice. It's great. It's interesting, but it's something you can do, with the COVID. You don't have to worry about, getting contaminated. Find somebody who's healthy like you and practice. And the one thing I did not do was a lot of takedowns to the ground. But I was basically talking, which would build your confidence. Somebody's in front of you with a knife. There's 3 specific general ways they're going to stab you, especially in corrections. Jab and low coming for your stomach. And I talk about why and what they're trying to accomplish. And then you slash it. You slash the X or slash the Z. Their goal is to open you up, so your entrails, that's my big word for the night, fall out. They want to spill your guts, because that takes you out of the fight. And then the overhead jab. My good buddy, Officer McGill, down at Hayes Prison, May of 2019, took 13 head and neck straight down jabs. The guy came up from behind, started shanking him with it. But yeah, we'll talk about it. We can do a video. My daughter's friend, he wants to do the knife video. She helps on the other, handcuffing and takedown, escorting inmates to the ground thing. But we can definitely do one that's specific inmate coming with those to the officer, standing, sitting in a chair, on the ground, different positions, how to protect for that.
Yeah, if you can, and I'll post it on my channel if you don't mind. Or
yes.
If you want to put it on yours, I could share it on the community. But sometimes what works out quicker, guys, and the audience could tell us here, is I believe if I get it directly and then I post it up, which is just as good. And then obviously you could use, as long as you don't put a copyright strike on me, We're
No.
good. So I'm going to steal your video then. All right. So
Yeah,
but yeah, if you don't mind, I'll post it up as soon as you put it up. I'll post it up because it was a request from the audience. And if you guys get a chance to watch the video today, it's a lengthy video. Put in the comments if it's a video you're interested in seeing. And don't forget, again, check out his channel, Sergeant Beast Larson. Now, Russ, anything you want to say in closing, sir?
I just want to put a big shout out to all the new guys there. I hope they're watching this stuff. I hope they're taking it to heart. I hope that they're trying different things and trying to learn this particular profession. Of course, Tier Talk is where it's at. This is where we do a lot of this discussion at, especially it's almost exclusively the videos that we use over on Keepers of Chaos. But if you're new to this profession, old to this profession, whatever, come on over to Keepers of Chaos. There's some great fellowship there. You're going to see a lot of history and content and knowledge. And I'm very proud of what we've got going on there. And I'm glad to just have been a part of this with both Steve and you tonight. And I think this is going to help some people out.
Yeah, I never thought about this. We get a lot of requests to use these videos for training. I got one the other day from a lieutenant. It was a video we did about the one that we did together. Was it the age one? I forget. I think it was the one we did together that's now being used. I don't care. Obviously, use them. I don't want money for it. Just take the video, use it. It's good information. You don't have to ask me for permission as long as you're using it for the right reasons, which I hope that's what it's for. But since we had the numbers, just see, because guys, this is you guys supporting what we do. So the channel right now is close to 14,300. And again, these are quality subscribers. I don't have viral videos. So these are people that one by one. And me, Russ, Steve will eventually know. We know who our subscribers are because we see a lot of them go over to the Keepers of Chaos community, believe it or not. So we build a family. And guys, real quick, before I give you the numbers, do you know that we didn't have this? Steve didn't have this. Russ didn't have this. I didn't have this 18 years ago. So these are people with experience sharing that. We're not going to be perfect. We're not always have the answers, and sometimes our answers could be debatable, but we're having the dialogue that starts good dialogue that can get to where we need to be, and sharing our experiences, learning from each other. We should have done this a long time ago, but now that it's here, don't take a chance. If this is your profession, because you never know what can save your life from these videos. I mean, I've had people tell me that, what we've provided so far has saved the inmate's life. So you never know where one video, we have videos that have many different topics, but I promise you guys, there's a nugget in every one. Even if we revisit something, we revisit with a different perspective. So you may have seen us touch on this, and that's great, but we've also now touched on this, and now Steve's on it. So it's another perspective of something we may have covered a few years ago, but still worth touching on again. And just to say thank you to the community, because I was just, as Steve said the numbers, I was like, you know what? That's a great way to thank the community. So I have 766 videos posted. So that's, a good amount, And I have 1.7 million views. It's not bad, guys. That's us. And I think one or two of those is from the Beast. And the other 1.7 million is probably from me. You know what I mean? But I'm the only one watching it. But as always, guys, I love you guys. Please stay safe. If you haven't, don't forget, subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit those bells. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. And real quick, one more thing. Interaction matters. So if you get to check out Steve's channel or mine, hit the likes, because YouTube will recognize that and it boosts it up on the algorithm. I know a lot of you guys be watching on those smart TVs, but if you get a chance after you're done, just hit us a like so it gets put to people that actually have a little bit interest in what we're doing. As always, guys, stay safe.